Well, we have this small task of just concluding 2 days of conversation here, 2 days of a lot of ideas. Personally, I want to thank ICRS and all of you for this amazing space. It has been really, really fruitful, valuable for me, coming along really far. Definitely, it was worth it, at least for me. Yeah. So thank you, thank you. I was telling Dicky that I was really impressed and amazed because every single conversation I got engaged in was like really, really insightful. I learned a lot. You are doing amazing research, amazing work. And yeah, I just wanted to highlight that because definitely ICRS and Yogyakarta in general, to the extent that I have seen, has been definitely a hub of ideas, a hub of reflections, a hub of debates that just highlights I believe, the objective of this Unconference, and is to create the space to move forward in an emerging field, particularly in polarization. So we could not have been in a better place in order to have the discussions that we had during these 2 days. So I want to start saying that. So thank you, and I have a personal say that it's love and gratitude to you all. Thank you so much.
Yeah, may I add
Yeah.
just something before? From our perspective, when we started with this idea, we were not sure whether will be, like a good way of, kind of concluding what we have done for the past 2-3 years throughout this project. But some of us have different experiences in different contexts. Dicky attended several more like rather informal gatherings like this. I myself also attended another event similar to this in Jakarta last year. So we had, like an idea of what we thought will be good. So for us also, this is a new experience. And we are happy. I mean, like I spoke to some people, and probably also you spoke to some people throughout these 2 days. And I'm also glad that it went, at least what they said, it went well, and that we all learn each other, not only like people like you coming from afar, learning from us, but also, of course, we are learning from all of you. So we are very happy, and probably this can be one type of activities that we can further collaborate in the future. Yeah.
Wonderful. Exactly, that's the purpose of this Unconference, right? And following that idea of Unconference, which have been just trying to define throughout these 2 days, I'm going to disappoint you a little bit, or we are going to disappoint you a little bit, because we don't have conclusions. We have not reached any conclusions. But instead, we have reached, or at least we are going to present some of the debates, some of the dilemmas, some of the questions that throughout these 2 days we have been discussing in general. That just shows, first, that we reach that objective of an Unconference, not something that rigid, more flexible, more open to ideas and discussions in general, but also we reach that objective of thinking polarization and polarization in general as an emerging field that is in constant and continued development, right? In its early ages. So at least what we could do right now is to start thinking on questions, debates, and dilemmas around this particular issue. I think that if we have reached some answers and concrete conclusions and really concrete ideas, we are doing something wrong, definitely. Or this Unconference would not have reach that objective. And I'm just trying to be provocative here, but definitely the idea of conclusion, of more questions and debates rather than concrete conclusion is something that with Fatima we want to put on the table before we open the mic to hear from you. What has been your experience and what other questions, debates, ideas, and experiences you have reached out. So I have put together some questions and dilemmas, but I don't know if Fatima would like to maybe complement a little bit more that idea of conclusions or.
Yeah, I mean, like, of course, for sure, I didn't participate in all of the sessions because I was not chairing, but I'm responsible for the cluster on gender, polarization, and social justice. So I learned also a lot from the conversation with them. But exactly on the issue of definition of polarization, rather than starting our discussion in our cluster with a definition of what polarization is, we actually ended up discussing what happened on the ground. So what are the realities? And then we don't really, I mean, like later, of course, I will invite my colleagues to add to this, but we didn't then come back to try to conclude as what you said, but rather I think we have addressed some important points, questions, challenges, but we also tried to elaborate more on possible collaborations in the future. So definitely we didn't come up with a conclusion in our cluster as well. Yeah.
Exactly. So maybe the first big question that we want to present and we want to state here is why we are studying polarization, why studying and reflecting and asking questions around polarization is important, right? And maybe some ideas arise during the different moments and sessions we had here. Some ideas were around that it's important just for the sake of knowledge, right? Because it's a human kind of development and it's important to understand it, but it's important just for the sake of knowledge. On the other hand, we also state more recently in the last session that no, it's important to study polarization because it needs to have an impact in the world, right? What is the impact that we are going to create by studying this particular phenomenon? So the big question that I would like first to propose to you before others, and I'm going to share with you all the questions and later open the mic to everyone, is exactly that. Like, why talking about polarization not even is important? Why we are talking about polarization, right? So that's the first question, and some ideas have arisen. Second, definitely that the second question that I would like to share with you is, what is polarization? And we have shared a lot of ideas again around what the definition of this concept is. And we have talked definitely about the polarization as a hyper problem initially, but also as a division, also as a radicalization of something, also as a bridge that has been broken between two poles, a gap between two actors, ideas, experiences. But again, we didn't reach a concrete definition about polarization, and that just states that a lot of thought and thinking around this topic needs to continue being developed, but just let me share with you that I personally feel that we are in the right track of at least asking these questions, right? In that sense, some of the questions around what is polarization also, the question of what is polarization also had different kind of, we call matices, how do you say that? Like like some kind of different measures, and particularly what some of the ideas develop around the idea of gender. And I know you have some reflections about what polarization is in the framework of gender, right, Fatima?
Yeah.
So you would like maybe to share?
Yeah. Well, in our clusters for the past 2 days, we have also come up with a few interesting questions related to gender polarization and social justice. So one question, for example, is what role does patriarchy play in fueling tension among women? So for example, we discussed that, okay, in some cases, actually, tension or polarization actually take place among women themselves. But then in that sense, we have also to think what is actually behind that and what actually the role of patriarchy, even if we look at the tension among women themselves. So this is probably one question. Another question, what is I found also quite interesting, because the session also attended by some lecturers, some academia. So again, also the question about what role can the academia play in our attempts to depolarize, because we also realized that at some points or some levels, women can be the actors of polarization, but also they can also be actors of depolarization. So this type of questions that came up in our discussion, but again, certainly after this, we will invite our colleagues here to say what they have shared in the session.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So exactly, what is polarization? A hyper problem, a division, a radicalization? That was definitely a question. But what Fatima is saying is a perfect segue for the third question that we would like to present, and is, where does polarization happens, right? Definitely we were talking about that polarization could be seen around politics, religion, environmental issues in general, gender issues, or instead, and the big question is a phenomenon that only happens in one particular topic, or that could be in fact seen in different kind of topics, right? So that's a debate that we also had, and that it still continue. And this idea of neither of or neither of them, it is a meta problem. It's an umbrella, right, that could cover any other topics in general. That could be also an answer. So definitely the question of where does polarization happens and in what topics is something that definitely we developed a lot. For me in particular, and let me share this experience for you, it was really valuable to see how usually in Colombia when we talk about polarization, we go directly into to think about polarization under the framework of peace building, negotiation, and armed conflict. Definitely that's directly where my mind went to when we talked about polarization. So from the very first start, being here in this in the context of ICRS was really valuable, because I saw that polarization, because the discussion that we had was initially not in peace building or violence in general that I was more used to, and it was more on religion in general, right? Like religion issues in general, interreligious studies as we were discussing. So that just pop in my head, like definitely this is a phenomenon that could maybe, that's a personal statement and I don't want to here create some kind of conclusion, but it's an idea that this could happen in different moments and topics in general. So that was personally a good realization for me. Yesterday we were also talking about, and this question rise up a lot of times, around who benefits from polarization, and that took us necessarily yesterday and today into a question of the actors that are around polarization, and definitely talk about power. Polarization took us to talk about power, took us to talk about oligarchy, took us to talk about economic groups, political groups, communicational groups, also business groups, and some conclusions around, or ideas around elections as a fertile ground or not, and also the digital world in general, and digital and technology as a tool that could either exacerbate or mitigate polarization. Those were some ideas that were developed. Fatima, I don't know if you have anything around these first questions. I have others, but don't want to monopolize another big.
No, I think probably if you have.
Do you want me to finish?
Yeah. I think then we can ask.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So we were in who benefits from polarization. That took us necessarily to a discussion around power. Today we were discussing also if polarization was real or not, right? And what I meant, or what I mean in terms of if it is real or not, we were discussing if it is a phenomenon that it's a concrete phenomenon, or instead it's a perceived phenomenon. That's a discussion we had today in the environmental session that Jonathan and Carolina led, and it's either or both maybe, right? But it's a concrete phenomenon or it's a perceived phenomenon. And that took us definitely to talk about whether if polarization is good or is bad. We put necessarily the ethical framework or an ethical discussion around polarization. And during all the sessions, maybe, we had to deal with that particular question. And I know that in the plenary, but also in the more small sessions, people said like, no, polarization is bad, definitely it's a phenomenon that we need to end. But on the other side, there were people that, no, polarization is a natural phenomenon and in fact could be good for society, right? So again, the study of polarization, the research of polarization could take us also to have some ethical questions and dilemmas that definitely are could be addressed. Three more questions really quick, and are those around where does polarization operates? That's important, and we have a big discussion in terms of the different levels where it can be developed. Could be developed locally, could be developed nationally or internationally too, and where, as scholars and practitioners too, where should we focus our energy, our resources, our capacity in order to understand, but also in order to address this phenomenon. And a lot of ideas were raised around this idea of where does polarization operates. And finally, I will say that the last of these big questions, and definitely there are more, it's how we should address polarization. What are the set of interventions that we could apply in order to, I'm not going to say end or exacerbate any of them, address, or impact polarization at some level, reshape polarization at some level. And some of the ideas, definitely, we proposed a solution spectrum that was around outreach and dialogue, structural reforms, facts and narrative, civic engagements in general. And today we also talk about communications, strategic communication actions, deliberation, and collective action in general. Those are maybe a really broad but comprehensive solution spectrum that we talk to around how we should address polarization in terms of we should mitigate it, we should exacerbate it. That's also a dilemma. And finally, a question that was raised more lately was where are the thought leaders? And maybe just on that particular question, I have an answer, and I like to think that are here, right? Are here the thought leaders around polarization as an emerging field, as an emerging practitioner, but also scholar ground. This emerging field, it's getting, it's growing, and the thought leaders are here. So I would leave it there before we continue with some other reflections from the public.
Yeah, sure. Just one probably additional point I think that have also been discussed is what are depolarization strategies that like each of us, or from our example, from our own community organization that we have, that we can bring so that we can learn each other, but we can also further collaborate. So that's, I think, another important point that we have learned. I mean, like, for example, while discussing challenges, issues that we face in Indonesia, for example, faced by women, we heard other colleagues actually say that your situation in Indonesia is actually much better as compared to other, contexts. So, yeah, I think this is also, as you said, a very good opportunity for us to learn also how we deal with these challenges and what type of strategies that we can apply. Yeah. So why don't I think we give opportunities to others? So we invite all of you to say something. Please feel free to speak in Bahasa Indonesia or in English or in Malay. Yeah, so maybe you want to add some additional questions, or you would like to respond to one of the questions that have been raised, or probably you would like to say something that has not been addressed, for example, from the board game, exercise. It's also very interesting. I joined only one, but today, not later today, not one is earlier today, or yesterday, or earlier today. So yeah, please feel free to add or to, yeah, Pak Diki, please.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. I'd just like to say that there have been many people coming up to me and say, why Unconference? And why the Un? And I think that was the first question that Anna also posed and Daniel also posed. And many of you came to me and said, why Un? And I don't know whether you get it now, but the whole idea is to deconstruct the whole sort of idea of a formal exchange of papers, academic papers and scientific papers or empirical research on polarization. Because the underlying assumption behind this Unconference is that there are no experts in the room on polarization. I mean, nobody here has written 10 books on polarization, right? Have you, Nick? Have you, David or Jonathan? No, right? So nobody has written 10 journal articles as well on polarization. And so it's not so much the death of expertise, but it's just this phenomenon that we are dealing with is so amorphous. It's there, but it's not there. It's everywhere, but it's not everywhere. And so that was the idea of the Unconference. And so it was to let everyone in on it and to get as much participation from different people and from different walks of life. I mean, you look around you and you see different kinds of people, right? You see academics, you see NGO activists, you see religious leaders, you have faith leaders, you have community leaders, you have NGOs here, you have the Globe Ethics, you have the Focolare, you have the Mennonite Central Committee, you have so many different kinds of people with different kinds of professions who have been affected by polarization, who can feel that there is polarization there, and who probably have been somewhat victimized by polarization in one way or the other, right? And so this Unconference was really to provide that platform where there is something for everyone, yeah? And that it was to allow creative chaos to unfold. I mean, that was the idea. Because we do believe that the more creative chaos there is, when we talk about and think about polarization, the more ideas it will generate. And so we did sort of think through this in ICRS and thought, maybe we can create these little bohemians, people who have these creative, maybe somewhat crazy ideas about how to mitigate polarization. And of course, in formal conferences, there is no place for such creative chaos, right? Because of the sort of restrictions, the academic parameters that are often set from the very beginning. And so I think in terms of that creative chaos, I think we have achieved that, and I think to a certain extent it has been successful in that sense. And I was earlier telling Daniel, we've flown you from Colombia, 24 hours away, and you come up only with questions. In the reflection, I said, come on, but it's normal. I mean, that's what we expected. We didn't expect answers. We didn't expect sort of firm commitments either. And so I think the issue of further collaboration is important for us. The issue of trying to think together, I think this space provides that experience for all of us, and hopefully we can bring this all back home, and then for us to start thinking through and together to deepen our understanding about polarization. Thank you.
Yeah, I identify myself as more as a practitioner in peace building. So I feel that my learning in this Unconference gave me a lot of enlightenment, especially the tendency as a practitioner to to be trapped into practical analysis, practical, as earlier I believe highlighted, practical solution. And then by getting involved in this type of exercise, again it opened up sort of the closed mindset into more open one, and then to think more, to open also the possibility of different angles of understanding situation or understanding issue. For example, I feel that my participation into this conference give me more positive insight about polarization rather than scary attitude or scary perception. And I mean, before attending this conference, I feel more negative about polarization, but now becoming at least more optimistic, more positive about polarization, because as earlier concluded, polarization is a reality and sometimes necessary to make things better progressive or better progressing. And then of course I also get sort of good exercise like the one with Focalare about how to create environment that enable you to find polarization and also to experience it in the conference. I think this is one of the good experience participating in this Unconference. Not only listening to, presentation, but also some exercises. Thank you so much for the organizers and for all the speakers and for the
Thank you.
contributors.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Maybe from this side again. Please feel free to say, like you can also say what you think is lacking probably from this event. I heard, okay. Bu Alim, I heard, and then I will go to this side, yeah. I think an issue that was raised on the topic of elderly, the polarization between the elderly and young people, I think. But Bu Alim, I think, will probably can elaborate a little bit more on this. Please, Bu Alim. Oh, okay.
Okay, thank you very much. I have two things that also we can add for discussing about polarization. First of all, relating to the digital polarization, because the work of digital with algorithm is like really divide the digital citizen, because sometimes only the mainstream group and who has the money, who pay the advertisement, who really in top of the digital performance or digital content. But something that really, the one who don't have money, and also maybe the minority, not many clickbait, so they will not be in the up situation. So I think we have to rethink about the algorithm, algorithm work in the digital situation. Is that really makes scary? Because the work of the algorithm itself, because it's really divide the people. Sometimes like me, because maybe my colleague, my friend is from people who are progressive people, so I will never get the information from the conservative people or maybe from other people. So this is, I think, one thing that we also need to criticize for the platform who has the system of algorithm. And the second one is relating to the elderly, because now there are also big gap between the elderly and the youth. For example, this is from Mbak Zakiyah, she left because there is something that she need to has to do. The elderly, sometimes they shock because of the youth who has different lifestyle. For example, the child-free marriage, and they don't want to get married. But the elderly, sometimes they don't accept this kind of the idea. So this is also something that we need to get how to make the health, mentally health for the elderly, because sometimes because of they were shocked, and then they create the mental health issue for the elderly. So I think that are two things that I can also add when we're talking about the polarization. Thank you very much.
I'd like to first of all thank once again ICRS, Pak Diki, especially for inviting us to this Unconference. Really very grateful. I've also, and my colleagues learned a lot, and really appreciate this opportunity to engage. I guess to get to the case in point, I mean the substance of these 2 days, if I may just focus maybe a bit of what Pak Diki was suggesting about narratives, even in the light of also this creature, I would call it a creature called polarization, which we try to understand. We know that it may be created, fabricated, but it can also arise, and found, to use a term. But there's also the question of learning how to live with it and how to face it. We can face it also with, we have a choice, I guess, to face it with this, maybe, I guess, go with the tide of the growing fear that it can create a monster. The creature becomes a monster. But then also the idea that this creature called polarization can be
I don't know, a pet that can be used to protect, the course of sustainable development, as we've seen as well. And I apologize for those who are with me in the group on environmental justice for maybe repeating what I mentioned, if you don't mind, about maybe focusing, maybe rephrase it as a question: would it be more beneficial to focus on what Mr. Adams was referring to, the actors being the norm keepers, and I would add another category of actors, namely the movers, which I like to think we are, right? Because I feel that in a way we also have to incorporate the time, the element of time. Part of the fear comes from also, I guess, this thing that our dear sister mentioned about technology, digitalization, becoming out of control, the gap with the intergenerational gap that comes into fore when we talk about this. But there's a lot of fear, I guess, and apprehension when we are faced with this. But I go back to our friend here who mentioned the importance of optimism in persevering to wrestle with this creature, right? I refer also to, I guess, going back to these actors, which I'd like to think that we are. We may be slow moving, and we may also have our faults, as we have seen. We can sometimes hit and run, to use a term. Researchers who go into communities and then later on try to make a contribution, but then later on, because we are also conditioned by other factors other than ourselves, we fall also into that trap. So it's part of being human. But again, I ask where the optimism can come from. And the optimism for me comes from places like this, that Pak Diki, ICRS has created, and I hope we can continue to create, maybe even recreate, because as we ourselves in the Focolare, we like this kind of thing because it promotes dialogue, it promotes also ideas, solutions, but also solidarity, which our world needs. And if we can't work together and we can't find that common ground, as which finding now, at searching, right? So sorry if I'm a bit long, but I'll end with this. To use the image that I used before, I feel that this facing this creature is like, in an optimistic way, would be learning how to dance. A great thinker once said that life is not about waiting for the storm to pass, or for the storm to come, for that matter, but it's learning how to dance with the rain. Right? And I like to think that I'm learning how to dance with the rain, but also to dance together to the same music. And I feel that music we can also find in our commonalities, even though these commonalities, may be diversified as well when we think about our faith, our religions, right? But we are discovering also more and more in the Focolare that we share many things in common than we find ourselves different. So I think it is a cause for optimism. It may be also the subject of study about narratives, and I'm very intrigued about that seed idea that Pak Diki suggested, maybe for the future, because narratives do drive polarization, and narratives can also be crafted but also arise. And I'm just happy that this discovery of new friendships, new connections has been a cause of optimism for me. Thank you again, ICRS and Pak Diki, and collaborators.
Thank you. Pak Zain?
Yeah, thank you. I have 2 points. So first, responding to Daniel's question, why do we talk about polarization? So we can continue, we can bring that questions further. We can also ask whose agenda is this? What do we want to achieve, speaking in terms of polarization? Probably also who funds this? A question which is in the previous session. So looking back at our own experience at ICRS, we started this in 2023, and actually I think we were struggling also to understand or to try to find the direction of this project. And then we had a literature review. We tried to look for what have people been talking about when they talk about polarization. We had an expert meeting, but I think only halfway to the project last year, it has become much clearer to us what kind of things actually matter. And so looking back at that experience, trying to find the direction, I think now, I mean, after this Unconference, I think I can say confidently that this is a productive framework. I mean, speaking about polarization, it opens conversations on many things, on the issues of social justice, on the issue of many ways, under what conditions polarization is good or bad, and then the differences, what is at stake when there's polarization. So things like that, which I think is really very encouraging. Well, some of the things which we discuss, either that's related to religion and politics, or gender issues, or environmental issues, we may use different frameworks when we take up those topics. But I do see that, I mean, speaking in terms of polarization, it opens up certain types of analysis, which is, like I said, productive. So, and as such, this is my second point. I think it's important to continue this conversation, collaboration. The title of this Unconference is Polarization, and it's content in the Global South. So we put an emphasis here in the Global South. Why? And what have I found? I mean, in these 2 days. So of course, first of all, we don't want to exclude North, not at all. I mean, but the idea since the beginning was to look for comparable experiences, and it's quite interesting actually. In our discussion, we also found comparable experiences with UK, with other other situation. But my own experience, it is really rare for me. I mean, I've been going to many conferences, forums in many parts of the world. It's very rare for me to sit together with people from Brazil, Colombia, South Africa, although we have so many things in common, many similarities. And that's what I think brings this, I mean, this 2 days conversation, certain, I mean, different flavor, which I like very much. And I hope this is a start, and we can continue for collaboration. So we don't have much time now, but I think it's good if we can say something about what are we going to do next. In our brief conversation with you, Anna, and others. So Anna, for example, immediately has an idea. Why don't we have meet every 2 months by Zoom? Just 1 hour, but sharing things, from Indonesia, from South Africa. So, and then, so continue until we find I don't know, probably common work we may do together, whether that's research or other things, until we find other opportunities to work, to collaborate further. So, yeah, that's my last point. So I hope in the remaining few minutes, maybe we can talk about what are we going to do next. I think that's going to be great. Well, we are still together here. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Anyone would like to specifically respond to Pak Zain's last point on possible concrete next steps? Just for brief information, starting last year at ICRS, we conducted a class on religion and polarization, a seminar class on religion and polarization last year, and it is offered also this year. And we are in the process of publishing an anthology written by us as lecturers as well as our students. Pak Diki and I are co-edit the book at the moment. And what else, Pak Diki? We have, I wrote down a few things. Oh, the film that probably some of you have seen last night. But yeah, it wouldn't stop there. But if you have like some specific, you know, just, it doesn't have to be like to make a commitment, but just ideas, I think. We want to say?
Yeah, Fatima, thank you. Just wanted to share that as part of the work that we are doing at the Institute for Integrated Transitions, the organization that I work in. As a next step, and we have been talking about this with Diki and others, is to continue working in what our program that is called the Global Initiative for Polarization, of course founded by Ford Foundation. And in that sense, we have developed some theoretical work, some theoretical questions around polarization to continue advancing on the field, definitely. But now we have moved forward, or we are moving forward in order to create what we are doing here, in fact, which is a community of practice around thought leaders, right, that continue talking about this. And IRCIS and other organizations here present definitely will help us continue creating, or will be part of that community of practice that will be engaging periodically, will be continue talking, but let me just share with you that that's something that from we are doing from the institute we are doing, and that's like our piece of rice that we can put on the table in order to continue these next steps.
Actually, one part of the, one important part of the whole project on religion and polarization is on issues related to environment. I think most of you or some of you have joined different sessions on issues related to environment. So I would like to probably ask Mas Ancu, maybe you would like to say a few words, or from the community. It is possible also to speak in bahasa Indonesia. Boleh mungkin menceritakan sedikit tentang apa yang dialami oleh teman-teman atau yang dirasakan oleh teman-teman komunitas dalam semua proses ini. Apakah ini proses yang cukup oke? Apakah ini sesuatu yang terlalu dianggap mungkin terlalu terstruktur atau cukup bisa diterima? So yeah.
Yeah, so we welcome our friends from the community also to share their thoughts, and Ibu Fatima has just explained in Bahasa Indonesia perhaps their views, their experience during the 2 days of the Unconference, and I will be here doing the translation, so please.
When we start this research, I was already burdened with basically a very theoretical framework on polarization, which what I have engaged myself with the colonial order that produces the polarization, the structure of domination and vulnerability. So we see the structure that throughout the way we produce knowledge, in which colonial order being reproduced, and we see how knowledge production, many of them preserve the domination. The discourse being produced are for the domination, and marginalized keep producing the marginalization of the marginalized people. So that was in our burden in thinking about how to do research. And so when we see and we meet these people, when we meet them, we didn't perceive them as the informants or respondents, but it is in ourselves carrying the concerns about environmental issues. It is in ourselves. We carry that. It is our problem. And so when we meet the people, because they also have that concerns. So what we meet, what we bring us together is the concerns that we have. And that is what we call then research. Research is to meeting, to bring together the concerns that we, whoever we are, the academics and also the people, whoever they are, who have the same concerns that we have. And so the discussion started with there. We didn't trust each other in the beginning. They had a very big distrust to us coming from campus. We spent like 2 days, 3 days discussing what we want to do. Who are you? That was the question, and others. So finally we came to the point that we meet them because we want to share. We know that they have that concerns and we want to learn, and so we can do together something. And so to cut the story short, our commitment together is that they are also researchers. We are researchers and they are also researchers. I think we kind of depolarize academics and also the communities. And we are thankful to them because they are willing to add their job, their professions, from being only farmers, become farmers and writers, become farmers and researchers. And that's for me like a big move for them that help us to work with them. And so I would call this research is a decolonial methodology, a decolonial engagement, a decolonial research that produce decolonizing knowledge, that bring us to see that the real issues is in the life of the people. And the ethics that we need to carry is that it is in the lives of the people that we share. And I remember, I'm reminded by one of the member when we discussed in the forum of the environmental justice is that, just to give one example, talking about energy, environmental issues, that energy is not only about electricity. Energy is about life. Energy is in the lands, in the forest, in the culture, in every being, living beings that we share. And so when we want to do developments like geothermal, like that, talking about energy, that must be brought into the discussion of the whole, the holistic realities that people living their lives. So just the introduction of what we are doing, I think we want to continue. We want to continue from now, not from now, but from, until heaven. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much.
Some of the things that have been taking place as a way of, I'm inspired, and I don't want to keep it to myself, I think. So very many of us attend conferences very frequently around the world, and they tend to have as their focus information, knowledge, reports, and then there's the inevitable person who always stands up and demands to correct and to say, well, you say this, but really, here is the truth. And what's really fascinating about our meeting for the last 2 days is that we have not seen that for the most part. And I'm very curious to know whether there's something about the design of this Unconference that might reflect this. So instead of information, knowledge, reports, and correction, we have seen a kind of struggle for articulation, a kind of development of imagination. In the various small groups, we've seen a focus on cases, and in our interactions in the tea and coffee breaks, but also in the meal times, a lot of encouragement. I'm also conscious that many conferences, it doesn't really matter where you are. You can meet anywhere. But here, there's a very strong sense of local action, of a gathering of folk who are already in some way connected with each other, but also the sheer power that UGM has to convene people in a particular location. So I want to make a comment. I cannot stop myself. I want to make a comment about the kind of metaphysics of an unconference, which is that typically in metaphysical discussions you have a very strong framework which you know in advance, and then you consider phenomena and you put them in this framework. So you have a developed language which is fairly well defined, and then your task is to situate things. So you work from the outside in. But what we have had in our unconference here is a really extraordinary reversal of working from the inside out, which is that we begin with the cases, we try and find a language, a bit like poets, a bit like artists, a bit like photographers, a bit like dancers, perhaps, in which what we have been doing together is to bring a set of frameworks, in the plural, slowly into view in a way which is creative and, in the end, I think, encouraging. And I want to say thank you.
Thank you, Nicolas. Well, with that note, we could not have ended in a better way. Thank you so much for that wonderful closing. And again, thank you for these wonderful 2 days where, again, creativity, imagination just were all around. Thank you for that. And again, love and gratitude for you all. Thank you so much. And with this, we close this wonderful Unconference. Thank you to IRCIS again.